In another battle with the Philistines at Gath, they encountered a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all, who was also a descendant of the giants. But when he defied and taunted Israel, he was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimei. These 4 Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. So maybe Gath just had a bunch of large men. I mean, if that was any sort of a genetic thing, then I guess that is understandable. People do... I mean, I'm not going to say for sure this is actually the case, but it's at least common thought that, you know, genetics play a part in one's height. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Alright. So we're looking at 2 Samuel chapter 21. David has basically been king throughout the whole throughout the whole book, but he's had various difficulties sort of challenging his rule as king, mostly in the form of other people trying to be king instead. But, it seems like, at least for the moment, that's all settled, and he's established as king after literally, like, back-to-back rebellions. And now maybe he's got some time to figure some other things out, as seems like might be implied from the title of this section here. But, yeah, I don't know if there's too much else that needs to be said for context. If something comes up that I recall some relevant information from before, I'll do my best to explain that. But otherwise, here we go. 2 Samuel chapter 21. There was a famine during David's reign that lasted for 3 years, so David asked the Lord about it. And the Lord said, "The famine has come because Saul and his family are guilty of murdering the Gibeonites." So the king summoned the Gibeonites. They were not part of Israel, but were all that was left of the nation of the Amorites. The people of Israel had sworn not to kill them, but Saul, in his zeal for Israel and Judah, had tried to wipe them out. David asked them, "What can I do for you? How can I make amends so that you will bless the Lord's people again?" Okay. So, I think that was actually something that happened back probably in Joshua. The Israelites were coming into the promised land, trying to settle there, and the Gibeonites, if I recall correctly, kind of tricked the Israelites into thinking that they weren't from that area, that they were just trying to find somewhere that they could, live peacefully and get some help. So that was how the agreement of, the people of Israel swearing not to kill them came about, to the best of my recollection. But Saul, being apparently like Mr. War Man, or at least Mr. Angry Man, it mentioned that he was pretty much constantly at war with the people around them. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not so good reasons. But Saul didn't seem to care about the previous, promise or oath or agreement or whatever you want to call it with the Gibeonites, and tried to wipe them out. So, when it's revealed that that's the reason why there's a famine in the land, David is now making an effort to try and figure this out. See what he can do to, set things right with them. And then we get their answer, starting in verse 4. Well, money can't settle this matter between us and the family of Saul, the Gibeonites replied. Neither can we demand the life of anyone in Israel. What can I do then? David asked. Just tell me, and I will do it for you. Then they replied, It was Saul who planned to destroy us, to keep us from having any place at all in the territory of Israel. So let 7 of Saul's sons be handed over to us, and we will execute them before the Lord at Gibeon, on the mountain of the Lord. All right, the king said, I will do it. The king spared Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, who was Saul's grandson, because of the oath David and Jonathan had sworn before the Lord. But he gave them Saul's 2 sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, whose mother was Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. He also gave them the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab, the wife of Adriel, son of Barzillai, from Meholah. The men of Gibeon executed them on the mountain before the Lord. So all 7 of them died together at the beginning of the barley harvest. Okay, it sounds a little counterintuitive, or like going against when it said, neither can we demand the life of anyone in Israel. Or maybe by that they meant like, well, we can't just, ask to randomly kill some people to get retribution. Because it was Saul who was guilty of this wrongdoing here, not the other people. So, otherwise, it would have just seemed like, well, we're just simply taking a life for a life with no regard for who's to blame. So, these sons of Saul wind up, well, sons and grandsons, I guess, of Saul wind up being the ones to kind of ultimately pay the price to attempt to make this right. It was, I mean, it's something that we might look at today and think like, well, couldn't there be some other way of making this happen? Again, David was asking the Gibeonites what they wanted, and like, considering how many of them Saul likely killed in trying to eliminate them, I don't want to say that it's fair or right, but it's at least a relevant, way to try to make up for it. And that was a lot of how, laws and revenge and punishments and penalties and things like that were just carried out back then. I mean, even today, in some cases, you get situations like that where it's like, okay, well, you did this thing wrong, so let's give you a punishment that's related to this kind of thing. When it's not just, all right, well, you owe us money or jail time. Okay, we got some notes to look over here. So, when it mentions the mountain of the Lord, it says in the Greek version, Hebrew reads, at Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of the Lord. Okay. Because, I mean, the mountain of the Lord probably would have been Mount Sinai as established back in Exodus. But that reading the Hebrew there makes a little bit more sense why it would say this here. Because if it's where the chosen one of the Lord came from, maybe that would make some sense. Anyway, footnote there, Mephibosheth is another name for Meribel. Yeah, But either way, this is talking about Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, possibly originally named Meribbaal. And then there's this other Mephibosheth here who was not Jonathan's son, but was a different son of Saul. So Jonathan's son got spared. A different Mephibosheth did not. Footnote there, Merib, as in a few Hebrew and Greek manuscripts and Syriac version. Most Hebrew manuscripts read Michal. Okay. I mean, Michal was originally David's wife. That he was kind of like awarded almost from Saul for his, you know, mighty acts of bravery and, you know, military proficiency. Anyway. Alright. Let's move along to verse 10 here then. Then Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, the mother of two of the men, spread burlap on a rock and stayed there the entire harvest season. She prevented the scavenger birds from tearing at their bodies during the day and stopped wild animals from eating them at night. When David learned what Rizpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went to the people of Jabesh-Gilead and retrieved the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan. When the Philistines had killed Saul and Jonathan on Mount Gilboa, the people of Jabesh-Gilead stole their bodies from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them. So David obtained the bones of Saul and Jonathan, as well as the bones of the men the Gibeonites had executed. Then the king ordered that they bury the bones in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, at the town of Zelah in the land of Benjamin. After that, God ended the famine in the land. So, this whole thing with Rizpah. So it said she spread burlap on a rock and stayed there. I guess she was like trying to cover up the bodies of her sons who were executed as part of this attempt to make things right with the Gibeonites. And I guess when realizing the dedication that she had to that, David kind of came to the conclusion, okay, maybe we need to give these sons and grandsons of Saul a more respectable burial and, like, you know, actually have them buried along with their other family members, as is fairly common practice. So, yeah. Their bodies wind up getting buried at the tomb of Saul's father. And then, I guess, through all of this, God's like, okay, you've made things right with the Gibeonites, at least as much as you could. No more famine. Then we get to verse 15 here. Once again, the Philistines were at war with Israel. And when David and his men were in the thick of battle, David became weak and exhausted. Ishbi-Benob was a descendant of the giants. His bronze spearhead weighed more than 7 pounds, and he was armed with a new sword. He had cornered David and was about to kill him. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue and killed the Philistine. Then David's men declared, "You are not going out to battle with us again. Why risk snuffing out the light of Israel?" So, It's not stated why David was exhausted. I mean, he might have been a bit on the older side of things at this point. But it's a good thing Abishai came around. I know Joab and Abishai tended to, at least on, approach to certain matters, kind of butted heads with David from time to time. But there's no doubting that they were also, proficient in battle. And good thing that was the case right here. Note there about the giants. Says, or a descendant of the Rapha. Also in 21:18. Okay. So later verses that mention the giants, I guess, it's that same word or phrase. But still, I mean, they had dealt with Goliath before, who was a giant, and it's not surprising, I guess, that there would still be more, giant men in the area. Bronze spearhead weighed more than 7 pounds. Hebrew says 300 shekels. Which is believed to be about 3.4 kilograms. And that's probably what they then, calculated out to be about 7 pounds. But yeah, just the head of the spear weighed about that much. Normally, you want spears to be kind of light so you can make quick movements with them. So yeah, just the head of it being that heavy, I mean, it makes more sense for someone who's a giant. But yeah, so Abishai comes to David's rescue, but then the rest of David's men are like, all right, nope, you're not coming out to fight with us anymore. No offense, David, but it seems like you're not up to the fighting. You're not up to the task of fighting as much as you used to be. So then, verse 18. After this, there was another battle against the Philistines at Gob. As they fought, Sibbecai from Hushah killed Saph, another descendant of the giants. During another battle at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair, from Bethlehem, killed the brother of Goliath of Gath. The handle of his spear was as thick as a weaver's beam. Wish I had an immediate point of reference on that. Might look up a picture at some point and in editing kind of put that in here. But I'm sure that's another thing to just kind of give a sense of the size of the spear. Note there, Jair, as in parallel text of 1 Chronicles 20. Hebrew reads son of Jair Orachim. There's, I'm sure, a bunch of ways that could potentially be pronounced, and I'm probably not going to think of the right one, but anyway. So, note there, as in Hebrew reads, killed Goliath of Gath, but Goliath should have already been dead, as per, the whole fight with David and Goliath back in 1 Samuel. So I guess because that didn't make much sense, the translators might have said, okay, well, there's this other mention of a similar thing in First Chronicles that sounds more like the brother of Goliath. So we'll go with that instead of saying that it was Goliath. I mean, just like we saw earlier about multiple people in Saul's family being named Mephibosheth, there could have been another Goliath that was also a giant. So now we've gotten 3 other giants slain in these battles with the Philistines. Then we get to verse 20. In another battle with the Philistines at Gath, they encountered a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all, who was also a descendant of the giants. But when he defied and taunted Israel, he was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimei. These 4 Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. So maybe Gath just had a bunch of large men. I mean, if that was any sort of a genetic thing, then I guess that is understandable. People do... I mean, I'm not going to say for sure this is actually the case, but it's at least common thought that, you know, genetics play a part in one's height. But, note there where it says they encountered a huge man. It's similar to 1 Chronicles 20, verse 6. Hebrew reads a Midianite, but Midianites weren't necessarily all known for being large, I wouldn't think. But either way, the 6 fingers and toes on each appendage was a bit unusual. And either way, like, even if it says he was a Midianite there, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that this last verse is wrong in saying that they were descendants of the giants of Gath, because they might have spread out a little bit. But also, real quick note there at where it says David's brother Shimei, as in parallel text, 1 Chronicles 20, verse 7. Hebrew reads Shimei, or Shimei, I don't know. It's a variant spelling. It could have also been said that way to distinguish him from the one guy who had, like, insulted David before because he was part of, like, Saul's tribe and didn't like David for that reason. Trying to say, all right, this is not that person. Although if it did use the same spelling, then it probably would have been like this guy Shimei, but not that other guy that we heard about before. Kind of like how there's a verse or two in the New Testament where it mentions someone named Judas, but it specifically goes out of the way to say not Judas Iscariot. But that's all I got for 2 Samuel 21. Okay, so David winds up having to deal with this famine in the land. It's kind of implied that, like, God brought it about, maybe, or that, I don't know, in some way, it definitely seems like it was caused by Saul's attempt to eliminate the Gibeonites, which, like, went against an agreement that was previously made. So, I guess they got that all fixed because the famine ended after, you know, kind of handing over Saul's sons to the Gibeonites, and then actually, like, kind of reburying, or at least finding a better spot to bury the bodies of Saul and Jonathan and them. And then we got a bunch of stuff about fighting giants. Seemingly, at least, descendants of, like, the same clan that Goliath was from. So, Goliath isn't the only giant that's mentioned in the Bible, even just by name. There are passing mentions to giants in general in other spots, but these are some of the few others that are actually, like, named. But, that's all we got for this chapter. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. Make sure you look down in the description for info on social media pages, links to all of that stuff, including Discord server, supporter page, all that kind of stuff. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Most of the social media sites you would think of. All down there. And of course, down below that, leave comments with any thoughts you have about this chapter, about other Bible-related things, questions you might have. Whatever you have for me, let me know down below. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.